Hey, what's going on everyone? It's Joe from Gadgetry Tech, and in today's relatively short video compared to my other stuff, we're going to talk about an all-in-one DAC amp from S.M.S.L. This is the RAW-MDA 1, and I've been asked to cover this, which is always a good sign. A lot of times when multiple people are in comments of other products or my community posts are asking about the MDA 1 or any other product, it usually means there's some good interest there, whether enough people have started talking about it positively or just something new and exciting. So I took this on for review because of that interest that other people were expressing. And there's a lot to like about it. It's $280, so it's not cheap, but it's not super high end. And I think when you start considering some of the stuff it packages in for the money, I still think it's a good value, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Now, this was sent to me by Shenzhen Audio. Doesn't affect what I say about it. I have no monetary kickbacks with them. I won't be using an affiliate link in the description. I don't want you to feel like I'm incentivized to review this for money. Purchase it however you like, but as a way of saying thank you to Shenzhen Audio, it's a great place to shop from, and I want to thank them for sending this to me. No conditions asked. They just straight up sent it, and I can do whatever I want with it. So with that being said, $280, that gives you a lot of choices in the audio market when it comes to amp DAC. So what makes the S.M.S.L RAW-MDA 1 special? For one, I like that it's in an all-in-one chassis. And when I say all-in-one, it's a DAC, it's an amp, and the power supply is integrated into the box. So you don't have to deal with a brick somewhere else. And depending on your desk setup, that is a huge selling point to me. It comes with a normal like 5 to 6 foot power cord, but because of this being a standard cord, you can buy a longer one or simply get a grounded extension cable and you're good to go. Now this has a USB-C input because again, it works as a DAC. It has a removable antenna, and this is used for Bluetooth because this DAC also supports Bluetooth, and that includes LDAC and aptX. So you know, it's pretty jam-packed. You have dual optical inputs, dual coaxial inputs, and then you have an analog out and a balanced output if you want to use this as an XLR-based DAC to hook up to a more powerful amp. Maybe you have powered speakers or a preamp, or sorry, a power amplifier for larger speakers. You can now use this as your DAC and preamp because it has two different modes. Now, as far as the headphone jack goes, you have a 6.3 millimeter or 1/4 inch output, and then you have a 4.4 millimeter balance. This isn't a true balanced amplifier, but it is noteworthy because depending on what you have for a device, it's nice to have both options. It's not using XLR as a full dedicated out, but this is pretty common and versatile enough. You have a multifunction volume wheel, and pressing in acts as an action button. So I'm going to connect this so you can see how that works. So I'm going to toggle the power switch up on the back of the unit. You should see a red light and then it'll boot. Here we are, S.M.S.L. We're just going to go through the menu real quick so you can see the UI. Now you see that it has PCM because we're in USB mode. This H stands for the higher output mode. There's of course your gain or volume setting, and then your sample rate down at the bottom. Now, if I just press this volume knob, I was talking about being a multifunction knob, you have a lot of different controls. If I double pressed it, it will go to the input screen, and you see USB, Bluetooth, optical 1, coaxial 1, optical 2, coaxial 2, and then just pressing again will select that input. To escape the menu, you have to press and hold. I'm not a huge fan of that. I wish there was some return option as well instead of just pressing and hold. Outputs, it shows all line output, headphone out, balanced and unbalanced. You can choose to have all of the outputs enabled at once or just one or the other. So this is where you would change that. It's pretty self-explanatory. PCM filter. Now, I forgot how it came out of the box, but you really just want linear fast roll off. There's really not a massive difference, and almost all of these, it's not perceptible by the human ear. So you can mess around with this and see if you hear a difference at all and pick your favorite. I'm not going to tell you which one sounds better or worse, but typically you want linear fast in my opinion. So we're going to leave it at that. Now HPA gain is also self-explanatory. You have a low and high gain. This isn't a super powerful all-in-one amp. It's rated at 1.7 watts at 32 ohm. So you don't need to necessarily go down to low, especially because it's a digital gain volume wheel. You don't have to worry about channel balancing either. So a lot of analog potentiometers, if you're at high gain on sensitive IEMs, for example, as soon as you start to increase the volume, it tends to have a channel imbalance because that's just the nature of how those potentiometers work. When you have digital gain, the channel balance isn't an issue. And this isn't so powerful where you could just get away with using the highest gain and leaving that and kind of forgetting about it. And in high gain, even with that 1.7 watt rating at 32 ohms, I hooked it up to 300 ohm Sennheiser HD 800S headphones. Sounded fantastic. I had tons of overhead. I still had, I think, 15 to 20 decibels left from 0. So I was obviously in the teens or 20 area, depending on the track, depending on how loud it was mastered. But it still gets loud enough. So we're going to press this again. This is a funny one. This is called Sound Color, Standard, Rich 1, 2, and 3, Tube 1, 2, and 3, and Crystal 1, 2, and 3. These are not EQs. This is not a major difference. Tube doesn't magically transform this into a tube amp, but what these do is it adds second and third order harmonics or distortion, which can color the sound. And hilariously enough, a lot of people will not hear the difference between off or one of these filters. It's minor. And I think that goes to show at how little of a difference people can perceive from a handful of Delta Sigma DACs, solid state DACs. Amplifier power is amplifier power. It just gets louder. And when you get higher end amps, some of the changes you hear are distortion or coloration in the sound. It's not just because an amp is better than the other. It's not as black and white as that. So you can mess with the filters to color the sound. I found that a couple of them you could hear the difference, although it's minor. And again, this is just with really critical listening. For everyday use, I found that I just leave it in the standard mode and I don't need to add harmonics to it to, jazz up the sound or make it different. Pre-mode is also self-explanatory. You have variable and fixed, and variable is going to make sure the outputs on the back of the unit are not set at full volume the entire time. This is important if you connect this to powered speakers that have no volume control or an amplifier that has no volume control. You need to use this as variable. That way this volume knob controls how loud the signal is going to that external amplifier of some kind. Fix is going to make it go out at full blast, which is nice if you want to use this as just a DAC and then use your external headphone amplifier to power your headphones separately from this. So I'm going to leave it on variable just so I don't accidentally do anything later. Function key, if I tap that, it says switch line and switch between line or headphone out. Basically, if I use the remote and I tap FN, it's going to change from the headphone output on the front to the line out in the back. And that's really nice if you want very quick control, if you are hooking this up as a preamp for headphones or speakers. So it just makes it easier. You can make it so the function key toggles through all of your outputs or go straight to the Bluetooth. So I'm going to press, we're going to select, you can see how the volume wheel is a little loose. I think I mentioned this earlier, but that's one of my only criticisms. I wish it was a little bit less touchy. So I'm going to hit enter again. And then you have DPLL, which is digital phase lock loop. And the reason why this is important, this is affecting jitter. Now, if you have some artifacts or weird issues when you're connected to USB, which I did, the default is 5. You could increase this a little bit, and that might help alleviate some of that noise. So if you're having issues with yours like I was with mine, maybe try increasing this, see if that affects the performance. But you can mess with this, and it's literally just a controller interface for jitter. You could just set and forget or just never touch it again, and your system will still work fine, but that is where you can address it. USB mode, UAC 1 or 2. If you flip this to UAC 1, it'll work on things like a PlayStation 5. Now this does not have a microphone input, it's just a headphone out, and there's no onboard EQ, so just consider this as a very high-powered, clean, all-in-one DAC amp that happens to also work on PS5 if you switch it to UAC 1 mode. Now, UI style is 2 different options. You have universal, which is what you've been seeing this whole time, and if I switch to graphics and then get out of here, let me press and hold, now it looks like this instead. I actually like the universal mode. I think it just presents the data better. I don't need pretty icons. Maybe I'm just boring, but if I go to universal and press and hold to get out, I think that looks quite nice either way. I think it looks pretty classy. So I'm going to tap back into this. Dimmer, again, pretty self-explanatory. You can have it dim at a certain time interval. And I think, yeah, it maxes out at 60 seconds. We're going to turn that off. Brightness is how bright your screen is. Again, pretty self-explanatory stuff. We're not reinventing the wheel here. And that is about it. Now, again, there's no return button. So to back out of this, I have to press and hold. The volume control is pretty nice. If you're connected to Bluetooth, you can get some extra controls up here, but you have your line button or your input button on the left side of the remote. You can see how fast and crisp it looks. I really like the way this interface is laid out. Function, we already talked about how that was set. I'm toggling between line out and the headphone out. Then you have a mute button. Again, pretty nice graphics, volume control, and you can see how fast it steps. On that note, if you are concerned about how fast the volume wheel adjusts, I'm kind of spinning it. See, it's not like a super premium feeling. I mean, it's metal. You know, it actually feels really nice, or at least it feels like metal because it's not. It is cold, so it's a metal knob. I just feel like I wish there was just a little bit more tension in it. Okay, so getting into sound quality, this part's going to be short. This isn't a long review because you have to know, one, what it can and can't do. We covered that. We covered the controls and layout and the display. I voiced my gripe with the volume knob, which is minor, but that's really the only thing that stood out. So what about sound quality? Now, this is just done well, okay? It's not, when you have an amp that's overdriven and the power's not there to back it up, sometimes like a loud bass note hits and it sounds stunted or weak or just crappy. It doesn't sound like alive. And that usually means the amp is being power starved or overdriven. Not the case here. More than enough power to back it up at the power output it's rated at. I find the bass to dig just as deep as it's supposed to. It's not making the bass magical, but it sounds how it's supposed to sound. There is a zero noise issue with this, like the noise floor is non-existent. So even if you have IEMs and you turn it up to high gain and you hit pause, you're not going to hear any hiss. It's a very dark background. Channel matching is perfect. It's digital gain, so I don't have any balance issues. Zero latency. Even on Bluetooth with my iPhone, which is not like aptX low latency stuff, when I did the latency sync test, it was damn near real time. So I could even use my iPhone for content consumption and hook it up to more expensive headphones, and it's good there. I didn't find it made any issues with the mid-range. I didn't add any grain to anything. The treble wasn't sibilant. It wasn't stunted. I didn't get a magic soundstage, but it didn't compress my soundstage either. This sounds the way a DAC is supposed to sound. That's the best thing I can say about an amp DAC like this, because that's how it should be. You should be able to mess with your sound through EQ later, but don't buy a DAC amp thinking it's going to magically transform your whole stack. This has the power I'm looking for. This has the user interface I'm looking for, the controls. I love the feature set at this price because frankly, it's just an awesome all-in-one DAC amp. It has your variable output if you want it to be as a DAC for external powered speakers or an amplifier. And it just checks a lot of right boxes. And I think that's really important. I think the price is fair. It's up to you, if depending on what you have, if this is the next amp upgrade or side grade, whatever you're looking for. I think it's safe from a sound quality perspective, and if it has the features, price, and layout you like, based off everything I said, I think it's a solid option. So, like I said, I have a link in the description below to take you to Shenzhen Audio just as a thanks to them for sending this to me. I get nothing back from that. It's not an affiliate link, but feel free to purchase there or wherever you feel comfortable. If you found the video helpful, don't forget to like and subscribe. I'd love to see you at the next one. With that being said, stay safe, and I'll see you next time. Bye.